have a practice or are you running a business? Valuation is the ultimate KPI.
Hey there, it's Mike Langford. Welcome to another episode of the Modern Financial Advisor podcast, brought to you by Trulytics by Envestnet. This week on the show, I have Kevin Darlington, the general manager and head of Broadridge Advisor Solutions, with me for a deep dive on advisor marketing trends. Kevin and his team at Broadridge recently released their fourth annual report on advisor marketing trends, and there is a ton of fascinating insights for us to cover. Whether you are looking to aggressively grow your business or you want to continue to run it as a thriving lifestyle business, this is a great episode for you. Okay, before we get to the conversation with Kevin, please make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Amazon, the YouTube, so wherever you like to get your podcast jam on. And if you have a question or a suggestion for a guest or a topic for the show, hit us up. Simply go to Trulytics.com and use that little contact form there, or shoot us an email, podcast@Trulytics.com. Okay, let's get to the conversation with Kevin Darlington. Kevin Darlington, so great to see you this morning. Welcome to the Modern Financial Advisor podcast.
Mike, great to be here. And I'm excited to chew it all up with you here today.
I am too. You and I are already firing on all cylinders, for a little bit of a behind the scenes for people who listen and watch the show frequently. We get on this recording solution called Riverside that we use, and we warm up by just shooting the breeze about what's happening and so forth. And you and I chopped it up for like 20 plus minutes. It was great.
Yeah, Mike and I have a lot in common. So a lot of the same things that we're trying to figure out in life, right?
Exactly. The kids going to college and all the hopes and dreams and how do you do all this type of stuff. So it's really, really fun. And who knows, maybe some of that will work into today's conversation as well. We can't help ourselves. Proud dads, you got to be proud dads wherever they can.
Yeah, it kind of finds its way in everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's kick things off with a bang here beyond the college stuff. Let's talk about attracting new clients. Today, we're going to be referencing the Broadridge fourth annual report on financial advisor marketing trends quite a bit. So we'll be sure to link that up in our show notes so that if you're interested in seeing the whole report, you can click on that and read all the stuff that we're referring to here. But the first big thing that jumped out to me from this year's report was that 63% of advisors are actively seeking new clients. Yet only 43% are experiencing increases in inbound prospect requests. So first of all, that 63% number feels really low to me. Like I'm thinking every advisor is looking for new clients, right? Is the active word there actively doing stuff to get new clients? Is that what you're finding there? Like, most advisors are kind of sitting back, or many advisors are sitting back kind of waiting for clients to come to them, and then only 63% are actively doing it. What's behind those numbers?
Yeah, no, good question. So, probably before I answer that, I'll tell you a little bit about the methodologies just to kind of ground everybody and like, how does it work? And so you can kind of pour the appropriate amount of salt on the data, right?
Yeah.
Right. So we've been doing this, as you said, this is our fourth year. We go out and we poll about 400 advisors. So it's a statistically significant survey, but it is self-reported answers, right? We ask questions and the advisor thinks for a moment and then they answer the question. So I'd say it's, it is very good directionally. And I think as we're now into year 4, the thing that I like to really dive into is, what are the trends? How are things changing? So it's all manner of questions. What are you thinking about in terms of how you're marketing to grow your business? What's working? What's not? How much are you spending? All that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I would say this is a little bit like a Rorschach test. Like it's an ink blot. You might see it and you interpret the question and you answer it one way, and I might see it and interpret it in a different way. But as far as client acquisition, 63% are saying that they're actively seeking new clients, as opposed to, I would say, the other possible choice they can say is they're more opportunistically and selectively.
Sure.
So that to me, connotes when someone comes in the door, you might be not fully, rolling out the red carpet for every single person that comes on the lot, so to speak. But I also would say, Mike, I actually don't know that every advisor's really waking up every day trying to grow their business. In fact, you and I both know Jeremiah Demaray done some
Yeah.
podcasting together. His firm actually does some work with advisors. They call them kind of virtual advisors that I think are more looking at their business as a lifestyle business, right? They sort of have their clientele where they want it. They're not looking to kill themselves every day. They want to just kind of keep things running, give every client a good amount of attention, and don't need 10, 15, 20 new clients every year. So I would say the 63% are the ones that are probably spending the highest proportion of their time and marketing dollars to acquire new clients. And I would say the other thing that jumps out when we're talking about just the big trends, right, is this actually was a back to a low in terms of advisors' confidence in growing their business. So yeah, like we've in 2020, as you'd imagine, like thick of the pandemic, advisors got pretty nervous, and only about 50% of them felt like they were confident in reaching their goals, their growth goals. 21, right, was a pretty good year for the industry, for portfolios, et cetera. And I think most advisors told us they felt pretty confident. Now we're back down. We're back down to about where we were pandemic level. So I think confidence is, for some reasons that are pretty obvious, is not really high right now.
I love the fact that you pointed out that many advisors are lifestyle advisors, lifestyle business owners, and that's okay. And because we're going to be talking a lot about growth and how people are using digital channels and so forth in their marketing efforts. But even if you have a lifestyle business and you're comfortable, hey, listen, I make the kind of money I want to make. I live the lifestyle I want. I play a lot of golf. I go to all my kids' stuff. Life is good for me. There is a reality of like, you still need to be marketing to your existing clients. You will, just by nature of just life, have some client attrition or some asset attrition, whether that's because your clients are getting older and they're starting to consume the wealth that they've accumulated with you, or client passes away or divorce happens and then they split up and they leave you as a relationship. Things happen. Mm-hmm. So marketing does matter even if you are operating a lifestyle business. So this talk is for you as much as it is for the advisor.
Yeah, no, very good point. Very good point. Yeah. And that it's a good point also that we also ask advisors to think about their marketing, both in terms of what portion of it is directed to acquiring new clients versus marketing that's more around nurturing existing relationships, growing share of wallet, promoting and keeping your clients happy enough, informed enough that they want to stay with you. And also, there it's about 2/3 of budgets are going to acquisition and about 1/3 more to that nurturing, which is probably appropriate, I would say.
Really, really smart. Well, let's jump into some things that are, I think, probably on many advisors' minds. So one of the things that I've heard repeatedly over the past few years is that advisors are leaning on digital channels more aggressively for marketing to bring on new clients and for servicing their existing clients. And it's some of the stuff we talked about with Jeremiah in the previous podcast we did together was servicing your clients and interacting with your clients on digital channels. Yet your study seems to highlight a few areas where advisors are feeling less confident. You actually just talked about, there's a confidence in their ability to attract new clients is back going lower, especially when it comes to digital. So first, like when it comes to marketing, my goodness, one of the things that jumped out is that only 10% of advisors are satisfied with their marketing ROI. Like, that seems low, right? But it doesn't seem like a surprise. If you keep reading on, you see that only 20% of advisors are measuring the ROI of their marketing efforts. So that means like the advisors who are marketing, some of them are just like, yeah, see if it works, right? So what's going on here? Why are so few advisors really actively measuring their ROI and not seeing the results they want?
Yeah, I mean, I suspect, and this is where the what you can discern from quantitative data only goes so far, right? But I suspect that when the advisor's thinking about their investment, it's well beyond the dollars, and it's both the dollars and the time that they've invested.
Yeah.
In terms of actual budgets, and this has been consistent throughout, advisors tend to tell us they spend about 3% of their annual revenue on on marketing. And the average annual spend across all the different types of advisors we've asked is around $17,000 a year. So they're saying, okay, I'm spending $17,000. That's about 3% of my revenue. So that would mean, order of magnitude, this is advisors that are generating over $500,000 in revenue a year.
Okay.
That actually financially is pretty good.
Yeah.
Right. As a marketer, and I've been doing marketing most of my career, but as a marketer, when you're looking at any business model, one of the things you have to ask yourself is like, what's your cost of client acquisition?
Right.
And, we try to get at that number also through this survey. How much are you spending? How many new clients did you acquire? So it's a little simplistic, but we back our way into a basic number of what's the average customer acquisition cost. And it's somewhere between $700 and $800.
Okay.
$700 and $800 to acquire a client in this space. All different models and all different amounts of fees generated either through commissions or fully fee based. But that's a pretty darn good customer acquisition cost when you consider most advisors are going to more than make that money back on a client's first year.
I was about to say that this is worth pointing out. So, and like really zeroing in on that topic, I'm so happy you brought this up because I've had this conversation because many advisors are somewhat reluctant to spend aggressively or invest aggressively on marketing, but it's like the ROI for this industry is monstrous because of recurring revenue. And not only is it recurring revenue, most likely any new relationship you get is going to grow, right? So if you go out and you spend $800 or even, I'm going to go up to $2,000 to acquire a client, and that client brings on $1 million of AUM to your company, and you'll just use 1%. That's $10,000 of fee revenue annually. And hopefully, what's the average lifetime of your customer? How often, and advisors, you've been in the business for 20 years. Let's say you've been in the business 20 years. How many of your clients have stayed with you since they came on? Right? So some of them have been with you for 20 years, some of them for 10 years. Not hard to see like a monster ROI. So if I was an advisor looking to grow, I would be pouring as much as I could into marketing efforts because I know that anytime I win, this person's with me.
Right. I mean, I think that a lot of advisors probably aren't thinking about the ROI in those terms, because if you think about it in those terms, it's really hard not to be pretty satisfied. I mean, there's a lot of ways to waste marketing dollars.
Sure.
But like the old adage was, I know 50% of my marketing budget is wasted. I just don't know which 50%.
Right.
Like there's still a lot of truth to that. I mean, even as you've gotten, to your point, more digital, you can do a lot more tracking and analytics. There's an element of fuzziness that makes this a bit more, I would say, art than science still.
Sure.
But I would say that when you evaluate ROI in those terms, it's hard to argue that this is not a good economic model. Now, that's just the dollars. I think the time is the harder thing to both quantify the investment in time and the output. And like I do a bit of consulting, not as much these days, but over the years I've done, small business consulting with people in and out of the industry, how to think about marketing yourself. The challenging thing for advisors is, right, the highly regulated industry. So all the marketing that needs to be done in any small business is always hard. And it's oftentimes, for any small business, it's just hard to find the cycles to devote the time and the headspace to it. I think in wealth, though, right, the added complexity of, well, I've got to do all this and stay compliant, that magnifies this the headspace and the time that needs to go into this. So I think a relevant stat on this one is that finding the time to do marketing was like the number 2 challenge. 80% of advisors say this is a big problem for them. They just can't find the time to do the marketing, and that's where I think that it probably is helping to make more advisors discontent on the ROI, because it feels like probably a headache, and a headache that at the end of a long week, week after week, they're probably like, either I didn't put enough time in, or I put enough time in that I didn't see any new clients get generated this week. So my gut tells me that this is not a good ROI.
I love the fact that you talk about some of this is discomfort with the amount of time. And I think some of that also, the root of that is likely a lack of confidence that you know what you're doing when it comes to marketing, right? You mentioned like some of it is like, hey, what's working, what's not working. It takes a while to find out what's working, what's not working. You have to put a lot of effort in and do some experiments and see where the results are coming from. And like you said, if it's trackable. So this makes me want to jump ahead a little bit because, I've said many times on this podcast that it's important to recognize that a large percentage of financial advisors didn't study finance in college. They weren't finance majors. And I think clients might be like, what? My advice? But no, they didn't. Most of them got their start in this business. They were called stockbrokers. The ones who have been in the business for 20, 30 years, they answered an ad and went and became a salesperson and then grew their business. And then over the time evolved into a financial advisor. Now, many of our new modern financial advisors who are coming in might have a genuine interest in finance and have studied that. But I think it's still a pretty high percentage that aren't finance majors. My suspicion is even a higher percentage are not marketing majors, right? They didn't study marketing. They have relatively low knowledge of marketing as a thing to do in business. So I guess, when we think about this and what you know about the industry, what are the areas of pain here? Because your study says that 30% of advisors have a defined marketing strategy, which means most don't. What are you seeing in terms of maybe the drivers of confidence and of those who are actually have a marketing strategy and those who don't?
My guess is, and from advisors I know, one of the things that they probably have to continuously reinforce with some of their clients is there are no magic bullets in investing and crafting a really strong overall approach to building and preserving wealth, right?
Mm.
Probably the most challenging clients for an advisor to deal with is the client that brings every cockamamie fly-by-night investment opportunity to the advisor, right? And the advisor has to continue to kind of keep them to stay in the course. It's a little bit of the same thing here. I think that the easy, quick gratification route is, whatever the new bell and whistle is.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of firms out there that are going to tell the advisor it's this bell and whistle that you have to chase right now. But I think it goes back to a lot of fundamentals in marketing that honestly are what drive a proper strategy. And we've been talking about ROI, like part of strategy and exactly how advisors work with clients is clearly outlining marketing goals, clearly measuring progress against those goals, and then having a cycle to continuously optimize that.
Mm.
And those goals, marketing goals would be, right, how many clients do I want to acquire? What are my goals around growing AUM with existing clients? And based on those goals, crafting a strategy that starts with, okay, who's my target audience or audience is? What are the different tools and resources I have at my disposal? How do I want to spend? Where do I want to spend to reach those audiences? How will I convert and nurture them? So, I say all that because it's just not that sexy, right? It's not,
Yeah.
It's not the thing that, especially for advisors that we all know are a little time starved, it's not a quick win. But I would say if you're interested in playing the long game on this, I think putting those things in place and kind of having a habit built into your firm's kind of operating model that you can continue to fine tune all that, measure it and optimize it. It's actually probably the most predictable way to have a far better growth trajectory than any other I can think of.
I love that you broke it down to some fundamentals, right? Some very basic, easy to understand fundamentals, because I think the best advisors do that for their clients. And so that should actually help an advisor who's maybe lacking in confidence or feeling a little bit of overwhelm to think about it in the way that you just described it, right? You said, hey, well, what are your goals? Do you want to grow your client base, client number? You want to grow AUM? Do you want to grow AUM through new client acquisition or grow AUM through just increasing share of wallet or, the assets that your existing clients have with you? Okay, those are relatively easy things to write down, sit down in like 5 minutes and make a decision on those types of things. Just as when you're meeting with your clients, if you're an advisor saying, let's talk about some of your goals. This conversation's happened all the time. When do you want to retire? Have you thought about that? Yes, maybe 65, 70, whatever. Okay. How do you want to live when you retire? Do you want to live in the same home? Do you want to live somewhere? So you start walking people through some basic questions, and then you know that their finances are tools and there's levers we can pull to help them get there. We can decide, okay, you can save more now, more aggressively, and retire earlier with less risk in your portfolio. Or you could take more risk on your portfolio, maybe save a little less and have a better lifestyle while you're young. It's a decision matrix there. Well, so I think the way that you just articulated there is like, okay, let's define our goals. What do we want to accomplish? Who are our customers? Who are our clients that we want to bring on? What do they look like? Where do they hang out online, right? Or in person? What types of activities do they engage in that they respond to, right? Do they listen to podcasts? Do they watch videos? Do they spend time on Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever? Okay, great. Let's have a strategy of putting ourselves in front of those people and hopefully attracting them into the business. So I really love it. I think you've done it's one of my best quotes we've ever had. We're pulling this and making this a segment.
Well, it's funny when you talk about all that, though. I think one other thing that this crashes into consistently. I mean, back to not having enough time, right? One of the other things we found that set like so strategy, having a defined marketing strategy. I mean, the data continues to prove that is the single biggest predictor of marketing success. Like 2x the amount of clients, far more AUM being brought on, much more likely to be satisfied with marketing ROI. So we know having a strategy is one of those critical components, but we also know advisors don't have a lot of time. So there's a huge likelihood that the advisors that are always stretched for time are not going to create a strategy. I would say one other thing that jumps out at me is the advisors that seem to also be much more associated with having a strategy and doing a lot better job at their marketing and having better ROIs, they're part of a team. Right. So I think that there's all sorts of movement in the industry from big firms, mid-sized firms, small firms, to kind of recognize that a team approach tends to work well. And this is just another, I think, proof point of that, if you've ever read the book, The Lean Startup, they talk about, right, working on the business versus working in the business. If you're a single advisor, I think that you almost by definition will always be working in the business. Like you're not setting up a level of scale and a level of process and a level of, just sort of the playbook for the business to run, because you're always going to be very busy dealing with all the day to day. If I think a team approach where there can be a more consistent and ongoing dedication to marketing, starting with a strategy, I think is going to also set apart the haves from the have-nots.
Such a smart observation. It's really true. Like, when you're a solo operator, and if you're doing everything, it's really hard to do everything really well. And it's hard to, like you say, carve the time out. And then when something pops up that's like you hit a wall, if you're only relying on your experience and your expertise, it's really difficult to get over that wall, right? Whereas somebody else who's gone over that wall a bunch of times knows how to do this type of stuff, right? Or their sole mission is getting over that wall, and they don't have to worry about dropping all the other pieces of the business down there. And we've been talking about in this podcast since its origin, that we're trying to help advisors change from having a practice to getting into having a business. And if you own a business, you think about how the business is operating. You're working on the business, right? Instead of in the business, as you described it there. So you are thinking about marketing is a function. We need to have marketing. It brings us in new clients. It helps us retain existing clients, right? Finance is a function, right? Who's managing the numbers? Who understands, are we profitable? How profitable are we? What's our cash flow from this business? Can it be better? Like, there's all these different functions. And so some of that you can do by bringing on a team, as you described, but the team doesn't even have to be internal. You can use outsource providers, right? Like there are outsource providers and solutions like Broadridge that'll help you with your marketing.
Yeah,
Right?
and I think a lot more of the larger firms that are trying to bring on more advisors, certainly a lot that we work with, recognize that providing a good foundation of marketing support is actually a really great way to attract and make loyal the most growth oriented advisors, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if your firm is, if your firm's right, and what firm isn't, what large firm, back to the point about like the lifestyle type advisors, I don't think
Yeah.
there's too many firms out there that are out there saying, hey, let's grow our advisor base with lifestyle type advisors, right?
Yeah.
It's it's just probably not going to allow them to meet their growth threshold. So if you're a firm that's trying to attract growth oriented advisors,
Yeah.
what better way to attract growth oriented advisors than to create a foundation of support for those
Yeah.
advisors? Like there's I think I can mention a firm name because I've heard it spoken about on another podcast, but I've heard on a podcast, I think it's probably 2 years ago now, Rick Edelman was talking about Edelman and how they think about marketing support. And
Yeah.
one of the rules at the time was when they bring new advisors in, those advisors are actually really, from a policy standpoint, not supposed to spend any time on marketing, because the thought is that's a firm capability.
Yeah.
Right. Which, wow, doesn't that make sense? Like they want their advisors spending all their time with clients, but if you're going to spend all your time with clients, then somebody else needs to do the marketing to make sure we're bringing in the new customers. Not a bad recipe, right?
Well, not a bad recipe at all. And it's heck, it's the reason why like many people choose a franchise model, or if you're going to open a restaurant versus opening your own restaurant. Now, look, if you open your own restaurant, you can have control over everything, including the marketing. It's all on you, with you in your one location restaurant. That's just you. However, if you were to buy a franchise, there's a system in place. And one of the reasons why you pay your 5% royalty to the franchise, right, is they're going to handle marketing. They're going to put the ads on TV. They're going to say, go to your, local Austin area Dairy Queen or whatever the franchise is, right? They're taking a lot. They're deciding the menu. They're doing a lot of the stuff for you. And of course, there's different, flavors of that when you think about being an advisor. If marketing isn't working for you and you don't have the time, the expertise, the budget to do it in-house, it may be beneficial for you and your clients to consider joining a team where that works for you.
Sure.
Love it. One thing that I wanted to circle back to, because I think this is really important. Well, it was important to me. I thought it was interesting. So hopefully you do too. When I was looking at the survey, one of the things that jumped out was advisors question the effectiveness of their websites. And to me, that seems a little bonkers, because of your marketing assets, like this is the one you own. You control this website. If you're doing an independent practice or an RIA, you own the website, right? So if you don't feel it's effective, you can invest some effort, time, money to make it more effective. What do you think is behind advisors' lack of confidence in the effectiveness of their websites?
Yeah, I mean, I again, reading into this somewhat, right? I think the importance of a website, I don't think, even in today's day and age, I don't think it can be overstated, because there's the concept of inbound versus outbound marketing, and there's a kind of a marketing saying that the marketer doesn't choose the channel, the consumer chooses the channel. And point. I bring that up because when an investor has sort of made the decision that maybe it's time that I look for a financial advisor, the next thing they have to do is decide, well, who's the right financial advisor? Yeah. I think in the last year, right, the one silver lining to challenging economic times is, for our industry, for the wealth industry, those are those moments where a lot of individuals finally say, yeah, it's time. I really need to get some professional help. So yes, I mean, it's a difficult time for financial advisors when markets are, sideways or down, and there's inflation, and there's, higher interest rates and all of those things. But I also think it's a good time in terms of generating new demand across all generations. Now, if there's more buyers on the lot, so to speak, you also have to understand that there's probably a infinitesimally small fraction of those buyers who aren't at some point on their journey of deciding who's the right advisor that are not going to spend at least a few minutes on the website of the advisor.
Yeah.
Right. That's their sniff test, if you will. One of the things so we're, full disclosure, like Broadridge Advisor Solutions, the business that I help look after here. I mean, we're all about trying to help advisors grow, and websites is one of the ways we help them do that. Yeah. One of the things we look at is we serve, call it, somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 60,000 websites.
Wow.
And one of the great pieces of data that we can look at is how are those websites performing in terms of generating new leads? Because most of that you can track, right? If Mike Langford came to advisor Kevin Darlington's site and you raise your hand in some way that says, hey, I'd like to schedule an appointment, or hey, I'd like to sign up for your newsletter, or any other thing that's you sort of digitally raising your hand, we can track that. And the range of effectiveness is all over the map. Yeah. And I think that we certainly think it's the most important yardstick for how effective a website is it generating good qualified leads?
Yeah.
And I think that the long-winded way of getting to your answer of why so many advisors don't think that they're as effective as they need to is two reasons. One is some of them legitimately are probably not generating enough leads, is number one. And number two, which is a probably more insidious problem, is a lot of those leads go totally unnurtured.
Yeah.
Advisors, I would say one of the things they struggle with is it's a long game to convert a quote unquote marketing lead. And one of the other pieces of data that we track is advisors tell us, how long does it take you to convert a marketing lead? Call it about 3 months. Most people aren't going to go to a website and say, hey, Mike, I spent 5 minutes on your website. Here's all my money. Right. So what is the, it's a very considered transaction, and there needs to be nurturing over that time. And I think that that's another big reason why when they finally get, someone to raise their hand, we've found that a lot of advisors put a lot of attention into them in a very short burst. And if there's not a really quick conversion, that prospect goes away.
It's so important that you pointed that out, because I've talked about this frequently. It's like, listen, most of the people you meet won't be in the market for your services right now, but eventually most of them will be, right? Meaning like, hey, you can meet somebody right now, they could be a perfect client for you, but like all their money's tied up in their 401k, their small business, their whatever. They're not just ready to move yet, or they have an existing financial advisor, but at some point in time, life events happen, right? It could be, again, they change jobs, they sell a business, they get a divorce, whatever. They might be. So you want to stay top of mind for those people. We're going to be talking about social media here in a second, which helps you stay top of mind. But the thing that you brought up that is so important is that your website is like your home base. It's a validator. It lets somebody who is in the process of going through their consideration set of Mike Langford, financial advisor, Kevin Darlington, financial advisor, which do I choose? Is this the right advisor for me? Well, let me go check out their website first. The language that's there matters. The imagery that's there matters. Have I found the right person to consider? And then to your point, if I click the ask for more information, set up an appointment button on your website, whatever that flow looks like, it's not going to be instant, right? It's going to be, now I'm taking the next step in the consideration of you. We've got another thing. So you want to continue staying in touch with me and talking to me and so forth, because it might take, to your point, 3 months if everything goes right.
Yeah, right. And going back to the trackability, right, of what we were talking about before, in online retail, the marketing is more scientific. When you're selling a product, and I'm making this up, when you're selling an average product that has an average retail price of $20, you typically can track much more causal relationships between, okay, how did my top of funnel activities, my advertising and things like that drive to my website? What proportion of those visitors converted? Because it's a very small level of consideration to make the transaction. I go to a website, I either buy or I don't buy. Now,
Right.
even in those situations, there's things like retargeting and things like after marketing that a lot of really good firms have gotten really good at, right? If I don't buy now, they're going to follow me around and get me back to buy later, right? Through all the digital marketing means we know of. I think advisors, the ability to show a causal relationship between marketing is always going to be hard. But it's our data certainly suggests a good correlative relationship between those advisors that and going back to more kind of like prescription here, Mike, is the advisors that tend to do well we see are much more specific on their website in terms of painting the picture of who the clients they serve are. So when you go there, the prospect, it's not just important about for you to see who is this advisor. It's important for you to see yourself in the clients they serve. If they paint a really good picture and they say, I serve clients that look like X, Y, and Z who have these kinds of needs, and I can see myself there, that's a really good way to trigger me to lean in. And then the other thing, obviously, is you want to put calls to action on your website. You want to put those little non-invasive triggers for them to raise their hand, answer a question they have, let them have access to a video that's a primer on how to think about estate taxes, things of value that might get them to raise their hand and tell you, number one, you're speaking to my needs, and number two, now that I'm interested in this, it might be a good indication that I am a qualified lead to be a client of yours in the future.
I love it. That's fantastic. So let's jump into these two other things real quick before I let you go that jumped out to me, and I think that are really relevant for our audience. Number one was social media usage by advisors, right? This is a bright spot that is near and dear to my heart because I kind of got my start in this part of the career, helping advisors and wealth management firms embrace social media. Your report says that 80% of advisors are investing in LinkedIn, 64% are investing in Facebook efforts, which is fantastic because, hey, listen, that's probably where your clients are, right? How are you seeing financial advisors leverage social successfully? And are you seeing any specific trends in the way they use it? I'm sure people would love to hear about that.
Yeah. And I mean, this is where I feel like the tactics really connect with the strategy that we talked about before. Yeah. So I guess first things first is unfortunately for advisors, the ability to reach your audience with purely organic content is always a little harder because the big social platforms, they know when your content is marketing and they know when it's meant to be sort of a advertising in sheep's clothing, if you will. More of the platforms I think are doing a very high level of surveillance to make sure that if you're marketing, you're going to pay us to do that. Right.
Yeah.
Now, when you build a network in LinkedIn or Facebook for that matter, you can still reach them organically. So content marketing is a lot of what we help advisors do. And so content marketing still does work. But going back to the strategy, let's say, for example, Mike, I'm an advisor and my strategy I've laid out says clients that I want to serve are business owners in the construction field and related areas. That's a great thing to put down on paper. But what I would take away from that as it relates to things like social media is I know a lot of business owners that are in the construction industry. They're not on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
So that's where defining, okay, who are they and where are they, that starts to lead to, is this the right tactic to reach that audience? Now, I might say, hey, I'm looking for rising corporate stars. They're probably on LinkedIn, so that might be a good way to reach them. And you might be able to cultivate a network. But that's where I would just say, social is just one more tool in the box, and it might be a more or less appropriate tool and a more effective or appropriate tool depending on your audience.
Yeah. And I tell you what you just built on there, and it's also related to the website. It kind of leads us into the last point I want to just get a couple of seconds from you on is this personalization thing, right? You mentioned, hey, listen, fish where the fish are effectively. If you're business owners in the construction industry, they might not be super active on LinkedIn. They might be more active on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, who knows? So pay attention to where your target client is. And when they come to your website, make sure you put some efforts out there to reassure them that they're in the right place, right? That you are the type of advisor who serves them. And that leads into some of the stuff that you've talked in great detail towards the end of the report. And we won't go through too much detail on it, and people can read the report. Personalization, how important it is to be personalized in your message. Real quick, what are some effective strategies and tools for advisors to leverage so they can deliver a more personalized experience, right? Not just a generalized, hey, I work with construction business owners, but something that really feels like it's meant to resonate with a client, a prospect, a referral partner. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, our experiences as consumers in so many different walks of life now, if you think about it, are pretty curated, right? If you go on Amazon, if you go on Netflix, you're typically going to see like, hey, Mike, here's some recommendations for you. And they've gotten pretty good, right? I mean, I a lot of times that's the first place I look, and I'm a lot of times I'm engaged. I don't know if you've ever used TikTok. My daughters are both on TikTok, and they spend more time than my wife or I would like. But the reason I bring that up is the magic of, and I would say also the concerning components of TikTok are how good the relevance algorithm has gotten. Yeah. The way they keep their viewers on the app is they keep throwing things that are more and more likely to engage those viewers. And they do that by learning from what they've consumed in the past. All that to say, I think advisors have to recognize that if they can't be a curator for their clients, and they're sharing information with clients that feels very cookie cutter or very one size fits all, I think that at every age, consumers' tolerance for irrelevant information is less and less. So you have all that, and I mentioned I was at the FSI conference. We had a whole panel on personalization, and an advisor got up and he was playing a little bit of a skeptic role. He said, I don't know what's really changed about how advisors need to personalize the experience. And one of the things I had said was, the way that, whether you think there's fee compression or not, I think most of the industry would demonstrate that advisors' books are growing, right? So more clients per advisor. Yeah. That's a pretty tough dynamic. If you need more and more clients who also want to have more and more of a personalized experience, I think at the end of the day, you do need technology to allow you to scale personalization. Look, there are a lot of tools out there that help do that. We're in that business, right? One of the things we do is we help advisors with content and technology to give their clients and prospects a curated experience. So that means practically, Mike, if you're a client of mine that's using Broadridge technology, every time you engage, we're going to know and try to help the advisor engage you even more relevantly and better the next time by giving you content that seems to be more and more kind of up your alley, if you will.
That's perfect. I love it. Well, that's an amazing place to close us out. Kevin, people are going to want to learn more about you. You're on LinkedIn. I know that, actively there. Broadridge.com. Where are some other places that people can go learn more about all the awesome stuff you guys are putting out?
Yeah. So at advisorstream.com, that's actually really one of our properties that advisors can learn a lot about how we help them in terms of this relevance and content marketing. That would be another big area I would encourage folks to check out as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Kevin. Really appreciate you having me on the show today.
Yeah, always good to hang out with you, Mike.
Thank you very much for listening to and/or watching this episode of the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. It's always great to have you with us. Huge thanks to Kevin Darlington from Broadridge for coming on the show to share the insights he and his team work so hard to pull together. I love these types of research reports, by the way. I always feel a little bit smarter about our industry after reading them, and then I feel wicked smart when I get to talk to the people who actually created the research behind the report. Super awesome stuff. So thanks, Kevin. Really appreciate it. All right. As I mentioned at the top of the show, please make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. And if you haven't done so already, give the episode a share on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, or wherever you hang out online. Chances are, if you like this episode of the show, so will people in your network. They'd love to hear all the goodness that Kevin shared, and they might like me too. So share this episode. Really appreciate it, okay? All right, that's it for today. As always, be nice to each other, and we will see you next time on the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast. See ya. Bye.